If you're after some gardening inspiration to relax to, then you've got a treat. Here are 12 unique gardens that all demonstrate how a little bit of creativity and a lot of passion and hard work can create some truly beautiful spaces.
I'm Tom, and I'm the head gardener here at Gravetime Manor, and this is our wall garden, which we manage to produce fruit and vegetables, cut flowers and edible flowers for Gravetime Manor Hotel. So Gravetime Manor is a historic garden that was established by William Robinson, who was one of the most important gardeners of his generation. He only built one garden, this is it, but he wrote over 70 books and completely changed gardening. He built this stunning landscape in the Sussex Weald with flower gardens and kitchen gardens and orchards and woodland gardens. We're particularly well known for the wild garden, which was first initiated in his book The Wild Garden in 1871. It's a real honour to be a head gardener for such an important and special garden, and it's a responsibility as well, because you're its custodian, and it's your responsibility to take care of it, develop it, and hopefully leave it in a better state than what you found it in. The wall garden at Gravetime Manor is fascinating. It's quite unique in its shape with this ellipse. Historically, it's very significant, being completed in 1900, making it one of the last great gardens of its genre. Of course, soon after that, the First World War and the Depression, the Second World War and food production had completely changed. William Robinson was a genius gardener, and he studied the site for 20 years before he built this. He moved the kitchen garden 3 times before he settled on this spot. We're halfway up the valley, so it works well with air drainage. The cold air falls down the valley, leaving the warm air trapped inside these elliptic walls, and then the air drainage works within this. Cold air falling down the south-facing slope, and the ellipse funnels the cold air into a tighter spot where we've got a small hole at the bottom that lets water out as well as cold air. It works like a frost gate. Yeah, the guests are particularly fascinated to see a wall garden running with integrity, that everything we grow is used in the manor, and everything they eat they can see grown here, whether it's the flowers used in the manor as cut flowers in floristry, or all of the ingredients that chef uses. And I think they're fascinated by our crop selection. We're really trying to find key ingredients that flavours that you can only get from a garden. There's so much work in growing these crops that we don't really want to grow things that taste the same if you buy them. So we're just looking for exceptional flavours unique to a garden for chef to showcase. Communication with the chef is really important to make this work. We try our best to get the chef to lead, because we need to know exactly what he wants, so that we're very precise in growing the right volume and the right crop for the right time. And that's tricky, because if we produce too much, we create a glut, and that takes up a lot of chef's work. And if we don't produce enough, it won't fit on the menu. I'm fascinated by plants. I've spent my life working with plants. I wouldn't even see it work because it's a lifestyle, and there's always a group of plants that you're particularly excited about. At the moment, I love growing hepaticas. I'm fascinated by magnolias. One of my big regrets is not planting more magnolias 10 years ago. I've just recently started collecting Dutch historic tulips, which we'll be using as cut flowers in here. And if it's food crops, I suppose one of my first loves is growing top fruit, apples and pears particularly. And we have about 50 varieties of apple. It's not a huge collection, but each apple has its purpose in the kitchen, and we grow them as restricted forms and in an orchard, but the main produce from that is making apple juice. I think there's so much to learn from every garden that you visit and to take home with you. I think one of the most important things is to always be looking at other gardens and always keeping an open mind, and seeing what little bits of knowledge you might be able to take home and apply. What people can learn from here, it's hard for me to say, really. Maybe crop selection and trying to make the most out of the space that you've got to get the most out of it in the kitchen. I like to think perhaps getting the most fun out of the ground you've got, because we really enjoy gardening here, and it needs to be fun. So hopefully people might take that away. If gardening's a chore for us, we get paid to do it, and it's our profession, and it doesn't really matter. Sometimes it might be a bit of a chore, but that's our job. But I think if you're doing it at home for a passion and for a hobby, then it's good to really assess the maximum enjoyment that you get out of it. So it's good to step back and ask yourself what's fun and what's a chore. And also sometimes things are a bit of a chore in the short term, but then the reward in the long term is huge. So investing that hard work for the rewards is important. And often horticulture's like that. A lot of work can be mundane, tedious, hard work, repetitive grind in the short term, but in the long term phenomenally rewarding. And that sums up horticulture, really. We don't restrict ourselves to heritage varieties at all. We want to grow what performs best and what tastes best. And I think that's closer to historic accuracy. If William Robinson had some of these modern varieties available in the 1880s, he would have used them. And so we're a heritage garden and we run it traditionally. However, we do use a lot of modern varieties and modern methods. So it's nothing stands still. A garden either goes backwards or forwards, so it's our job to try and keep it always moving forwards if we can. There's a whole family of local gardens that I visit regularly. Nyman's, Board Hill, Leonards-Lee, High Beeches, Wakehurst Place to an extent. They're all very local, and they were deeply influenced by William Robinson, and every garden has its fascination, and I think it's important to always be looking, always talking to gardeners, and always keeping an open mind.
So my name is Jamie Walton and I'm the head grower here at Raithwaite Sands End. So I came here to take on the project of building the new kitchen garden here at Raithwaite. The brief was basically to design and build a space that was not only so that it could provide the restaurant with produce, it was also that the space could be educational and it could be a space that the guests could enjoy and interact with, and that was an important part of why the site is where it is. I mean, the hotel is moving in a far more sustainable direction. That's the whole goal here at Raithwaite, and the garden basically was one of the primary focuses of this year, moving in that direction. So the garden is here to essentially feed the on-site restaurant and bar. The garden's placement was an interesting one. When I first took on the project and they kind of explained that this is where they wanted it, I was a little bit taken aback just because of the gradient of the hill. It's more or less north facing, and also there is a car park right there. So I mean, their idea was that they wanted the space to be an area that the guests can interact with and learn from, and there's some traceability there. They can see where the produce is coming from, and the produce will be the vegetables will be in the ground, and then they'll be on the plate in the evening. So they wanted it to be a front of house area, which made things far more challenging, obviously. So we had to terrace. It was an interesting project that actually offered a few advantages that were unexpected. For example, the polytunnels, because they're terraced, was actually able to add guttering to each of the polytunnels, which meant that we're able to get the polytunnels are 15 metres each by 5 metres, which is a huge amount of catchment area for the water. So there's a water catchment system built into all three polytunnels, which gives us a huge amount of resilience when it comes to water collection. The whole kind of garden was built around the premise of having a very large composting section, because we want the garden to be as resilient as possible and as self-sufficient as possible. And having a large composting area was central to that, really, because we do have 80 acres here, as well as all of the organic matter byproducts from the actual kitchen garden. We also have plenty from the extra acreage we have. So that also gets put into the compost. So the idea is that going forward in the next couple of years, we'll be able to be more or less self-reliant in compost, water, and even seeds. Yeah, we do use a fair amount of kitchen waste. I mean, again, byproducts is a better word than waste. I think we use a lot of the byproducts from the kitchen. They come back up here. So it's a nice circular system that we send the things through, and anything that they can't use, although they do try and use more of the vegetable than would maybe conventionally be used. So the tops of beetroots and other things, they will send me some back, which I then add to the compost. Once the garden was set up, the beds were full, and guests started interacting with the space. That was really exciting. The first 6 months of this project, I kind of lived the project, really, and not a lot happens. A lot happens in that time frame, but not a lot of growing happens in that time frame. And I was trying to juggle building the site as well as ensuring that we had a full season, and that we were able to grow an array of things. So yeah, once that kind of culminated in the garden being full this year, and then a lot of the produce going to the kitchen, and also guests interacting with the space and being able to see where the things they're eating in the restaurant have come from. It was it was really interesting. It's all no dig. Even the terracing was all done by hand, so there was no machinery involved. So all no dig practices. Mulching is generally all we do. Compost could be leaf mold, organic straw mulch, or even seaweed. We only use no dig practices. Pest pressure has been a bit of an issue, only because it's a newly established garden. But to be honest, it's already finding its balance. We're finding obviously that no dig is really helping the soil regenerate, because it was in a bit of poor condition, and strengthening the plants, which is helping to deter the pests. Also, companion planting, interplanting is a practice that we employ here. So the beds are densely packed, or as densely packed as possible, with a variety of plants, and that obviously helps with keeping the pests at bay. Part of the kind of brief when designing and building the space was that it would be an educational space, and it would be a space that people can enjoy and also learn from. So it was important for me to add in certain elements that were experimental and potentially educational. So the polyculture bed, as well as there's essentially a demonstration bed that's veg in one bed, coined by Hugh Richards, I think, is approximately the size of an average yard or garden space that somebody could have, and just to show the amount of vegetables and the amount of produce that can be generated from that kind of space. But the polyculture bed has been particularly interesting because there's such a diverse array of plants within that one space. I've actually found that space, that area, the soil health is building so quickly within that space. Because we built the garden no dig, so we used mulching to cover the lawn that was here prior. We had quite an issue with wireworm, which was something we didn't necessarily anticipate. They came through, and the only vegetation was the plants that I'd planted, so it had a bit of an issue with those. Other than that, really, there's not really been anything that hasn't kind of worked. I mean, the compost bays were interesting. Trying to build those on the hill, had to build a bit of a platform which kind of fell down at one point, and then we eventually managed to get it to where it is now. Well, I mean, it's a beautiful place to turn up and work. A lot of deer here and rabbits, and they really aren't shy, so they will come and help themselves if left unchecked. I mean, even with the fences that we have, they will jump them, and we often find hoof prints here and there throughout the garden. So we'll check that there's no real issues, and then we'll do some harvesting for the kitchen. So we'll go through, ask the kitchen if there's anything they specifically need, and required for that day, and then from there we'll kind of go and harvest whatever they need, take it through, and then just get on with the kind of day's tasks really. The coming season we're aiming to kind of consolidate what we're doing here, so we'll start to build more of a collaboration between the garden and the chefs, the kitchen, and also we've got plans to develop a hotbed system, a site just behind, where we'll be able to produce throughout the colder months. So that's a really exciting project that we're taking on this coming season. We've planted a forest garden this year, which over the coming years will develop nicely. And also we're kind of considering the prospect of breaking ground on another site within the grounds that's far flatter than this section here, so it'd be far easier prospect and be more of a kind of a production area, as opposed to this kind of has it is productive and it has to be productive, but also one of its primary functions is it just being a space that the guests can learn from and interact with. The no-dig beds have basically been designed around what's becoming a market garden standard of around 75 centimetres to a 30 centimetre pathway. Obviously that was interesting, trying to fit that around the framework of a terrace garden, but I think it worked out pretty nicely. There's been the odd time where I've nearly tripped and fallen into the bed below, but I haven't done it yet. Cross my fingers. But I think that it actually visually adds something to the space, as well as allowing us to maximise the growing space within the garden. But having the beds terraced in such a way, I mean, it was a lot more work to first establish the beds, but obviously because they're no dig, there's very little work ongoing. So all we'll do is add a small amount of compost every year, and then sometimes grass clippings or straw mulch or whatever else. But that's all that it'll require. But I think the actual terrace beds do add something visually. So when you approach it, the car park, because of the gradient of the land here, the beds kind of stack up on one another, and they do add something visually, I think, to the space. And that's also kind of I bear that in mind when planting. So I'm thinking about the growing height of each plant, so that you're able to see as many of the plants as you can within the terrace system. Didn't quite work out with the Aztec broccoli. Yeah, it was definitely a challenging first year, having a drought and kind of one of the driest summers in maybe 20 odd years was fairly challenging, considering it was the first year that we established the garden. But employing the no-dig method really helped with that. And I mean, supporting the soil and the life within it, such as the mycorrhizal fungi and the fungal filaments, interacting and creating a symbiotic relationship with the plant roots, then enables them to kind of handle drought much better. And I think the whole garden was designed around resilience. So having stored water really helped. Mulching really helped. So grass clippings and straw mulch really helped. And the wood chip in the pathways definitely helps retain the moisture. So as well as composting everything that we can and creating our own compost to mulch the beds, I also grow a lot of green manure. Some of that we just cut and then add to the compost. But a lot of the time, if a bed is out of action, we'll use green manures, or if there's taller growing plants within the bed, we often use things such as daikon radish or whatever else to undersow. So using the green manures is a way that we can add our own fertility without having to bring it in from anywhere else. So with using green manures as well as the composting system that we have, we shouldn't have to bring in any fertility. We should be able to create the fertility that the garden needs ourselves, which is our aim.
In our previous garden, we created all the vegetable beds first, and it was only after about 3 years that I created a central flower garden. And at that point I suddenly realised just what I'd been missing for so long, and it was to have flowers in my life, really, have them around me. So when we started planning this garden, I thought one of the first things I was going to do after I built the beds was to get as many flowers as I could into the beds, annual flowers that would bring me that joy from year one. And so it's taken about 8 months to put all these beds together, and in that time I've grown some flowers, I've grown an awful lot of veg, and it really feels like the garden is not just coming together, but it's my garden. But growing flowers in the vegetable garden isn't just about it being pretty. There are some really good reasons for having a lot of blossoms in the garden, and it's also not just about cutting them to take them in the house, but the more flowers you've got and the more diversity of types of flowers and things that are in bloom at different times of the year, the more you're going to attract pollinators and predators of pests into your garden, and you're going to increase biodiversity. Bees like the ones on these lupins, ladybirds, and almost every other insect in between are going to be invited in and encouraged into your garden. And it's also going to bring with it some pests. But the nice thing is, once the pests come, it's not very long before their predators arrive, and you start building a balance within the garden, a natural balance that's going to help deal with the pests as they come along. That's going to help improve pollination of your plants. So things like beans and peas, courgettes and squash, all of which need to be pollinated to produce their seeds. They're all going to do so much better by having more and more pollinators in your garden. Now you can grow flowers with vegetables as companion plants, and I'm not quite doing that here. I'm growing these because I love them. They're not warding off particular pests. They're not adding a particular something to each vegetable. What they're doing is a more overall job of attracting pollinators and predators into the garden. But at the same time, some of the plants are grown as companion plants. And in this bed I've got masses of cosmos and eryngiums and various other flowers, and in amongst them I've then got vegetables growing almost as a companion to the flowers. So things like the curly kale, well, to be honest, we don't eat kale. The ducks do, so I'm very happy to grow for them. We've tried time and time again to eat kale, and we just don't like the taste of it. Not even lovely kale chips. They're not lovely. So I think I might be doing it wrong. But I am growing these plants as food for pollinators, food for butterflies, and then food for the ducks, and in turn we get the duck eggs. But the other thing that it allows me to do is add foliage into the flowers when I'm picking those, and makes a really fantastic addition to a bunch of flowers. And the thing that I've aimed for this year is to produce a bunch of flowers for the house every week, so that we've always got fresh flowers from the garden to go with the fresh vegetables. So this beautiful purpley spiky flower here is agastache, or agastache, and it's part of the mint family, and it's got the most incredible scented leaves. They're slightly licoricey, slightly aniseedy. The smell is wonderful. It's really important for me. It's that thing of, not only am I creating something that's visually nice, that's nourishing our bodies through the vegetables, but I also want to have my senses pleased. I want to have them provoked. Aromas are really good at, oh, sorry, bumblebee. Aromas are really good at bringing back memories, so having lots of scented plants in the garden, like agastache, like lemon balm and mints that you can just brush past. So having plants that provide scents and aromas in the garden is a really important thing for me. So I'm also growing loads of thymes and marjorams in the garden. All these herbs I use in cooking, but right now they're all in flower. And sadly, the stems are far too short to add to my bouquet. But I do sometimes pick a very small bunch of these and put them in an egg cup by the bed, just so that we've got that aroma in the bedroom. Oh, and it's so lovely. When I'm cutting flowers for the house, I like to try and include herbs, so things like this flat leaf parsley. And this is really simple to grow. I don't even grow it from seed. I buy a pot at the supermarket and divide it up because I know then it's already well rooted and happily growing. And then just put several pieces from one pot in the bed. Away it grows, and it provides not only food for the kitchen, but then it provides me some greenery to go with the flowers. While I'm out here, I'll just deadhead a few flowers as I go. So this is calendula or pot marigold, and not only has it got this intensely orange beautiful colour, but this is really useful in the kitchen. I can use the petals in salads, put them onto lettuce leaves and different leaves that we're eating, but I also dry the petals and then use them as an alternative to saffron. It's a very, very subtle, very gentle taste to them, but putting them into rice or into eggs just lifts the flavour a tiny bit. And this plant, which we've got in several colours in the garden, is bergamot or monarda, and it's also known as bee balm because it attracts bees to it. But it's actually the leaf that's used in Earl Grey tea with this incredible aroma to it. So you can use it in tea, or you can make a separate infusion from it. And it's herbaceous perennial, so it does this and then it dies down over winter and comes back up. It's clump forming, it spreads quite a lot, so it can be a bit of a bully in the garden, but I have no problem with it being here. It's absolutely doing its job. It's attracting insects in and it's providing food for our bees. This is fennel, bronze fennel, and although we use the leaves quite a lot in cooking, one of the things I really like are the really attractive flower heads. And then I leave it to flower and I leave it to go to seed, and then I harvest the seeds for use in the kitchen. Pretty much every plant in the garden I will say, oh, this is my favourite. But this Nicotiana is an annual. I buy them as small plug plants because I've just not been very good at growing them from seed. But they are amazing. They go from nothing to these tall, stately, incredibly beautifully scented flowers. So I don't use the leaves in cooking. I don't use the flowers in cooking. These are purely ornamental, but these are here because I just love them so much. And then another favourite is a good old-fashioned dahlia. They go in and out of fashion, so they were very popular when I first started gardening many decades ago, and then they went out of fashion, but I'm pleased to say they're absolutely back in fashion again now, and growing dahlias is such a joyful thing. The range of colours, the range of flower shapes, they flower their little socks off for weeks and weeks on end, and as long as you keep deadheading them, they just produce more and more flowers. Why wouldn't you want this in the garden? And then we've also got lots of nasturtiums. I grow huge numbers of nasturtiums every year. Pretty much every part of this plant is edible, so you can use the leaves in a salad or stir fry. They've got a sort of slightly peppery, in fact a very peppery taste to them. The flowers are edible. You can use them to decorate salads, desserts, cakes. You can even lay them out on a tray and then roll butter across them so they stick to the butter for if you're having a special tea party or something. Here comes the cat. And on the end of very curly flower stems, they produce seeds, and the seeds can be pickled and used as an alternative to capers. So in just a few minutes of wandering around the garden, I've been able to produce another nice bunch of flowers to take into the house this week. And it's a reminder while I'm in the kitchen of all the scents and the flowers, all the vegetables that are growing in the garden.
So seeds are living things, even though they don't it's just a dead plant material. They are living, breathing little moments of potential.
I am Paris Alma.
I'm Lily Proust.
And we run Alma Proust.
And we have to say there's no such
There's no
person.
Alma Proust.
Yeah, because people think that she might be like our sister or something. We're not actually related, but we've got a very good sisterly energy.
We've had weddings, haven't we? Is Alma coming today too?
No. We were both growing flowers for weddings, for florists, for nationwide bouquets, and so we'd joined forces on bulb orders and ranunculus orders, and suddenly found ourselves
Needing help, both of us needing help.
needing
really.
each other.
Yeah.
I needed Paris's help with a wedding and got in touch, and she said, "Hey, I actually am thinking of moving down to Devon," and I was like, "Don't do that. Come and help me." And so quite quickly we realised within 6 months my son was born and I was really poorly and was in hospital. And I was like, wow, I really cannot live without this amazing person in my life. And I've worked with
I felt the same. It wasn't excellent one-sided.
We're both self-proclaimed not great at working in a team, but we've actually managed to reframe that because we work really well with each other. And I've worked with people before, I didn't have that shorthand. And growing on the land commercially, even though we do it at small scale, demands so much time and energy, and to have someone who can meet that to the standards and have a shorthand of how we do stuff was so amazing.
And we didn't go into it planning any of this really.
No.
It was just me helping with the wedding, and then I helped here for a bit, and
we just laugh a lot and have a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
We definitely started out with way more.
we were going towards just flowers for florists,
Yeah.
weren't we? And that was what we were kind of aiming towards with the business.
Yeah.
But then we'd both done the seed thing before.
Yeah.
Um,
We both love stationery. So
and a lot of organisation.
yeah. So the seeds really speak to us in a big way. So I started saving. I've always saved seeds since I started doing this almost 10 years ago, and then started selling seeds on the smaller scale in 2018. And then both of us went big on the seeds in 2020 because
Everyone just wanted to grow, didn't they?
yeah, and there was real seeds
Desperate to grow.
shortages. And it was also interesting because it was a big moment for British flowers because the ports shut, so everyone had more of a focus on local. So we went big on that. So we were doing very much the same thing before we joined forces, and then
About 5 miles down the road
Yeah.
from each other.
Paris has a really, I'm going to just give
Okay.
you I love giving. She's a better grower than I am because she's more consistent than I am. I'm way more chaotic. We're both super interested and curious about plants and the genetics of plants, and seeds are kind of so beautiful in so many ways and so existential, and getting to witness the whole beauty of the life cycle. We really love collecting plants. We get our seed stash for ourselves.
Is boxes and boxes and
Astronomical,
boxes.
because we just want to try everything and look at everything and see how it holds up in a vase and what ingredients might be amazing for an arrangement but aren't necessarily the things that you think of. And
especially with sweet peas, we start off with a list of like 30, and we're like, oh right, it's 35, it's 40, it's 45, it's 55.
yeah,
And it just goes up and up.
soon.
trying
And
to
now
find the best.
next year we'll be growing 140 varieties of sweet pea. It's super empowering, and everyone would have saved their own seed on some capacity until fairly recently in the advent of big seed companies, and big seed companies I'm talking about, the huge, it's most of the world's seed are owned by a handful of corporations, and it's become very unhuman. And then there's a lot of like F1 varieties which don't come true, and we're still fighting against that because there's still such a demand for specific varieties that are so beautiful. But we'd love to become completely self-sufficient from those sorts of varieties. Everything here is open pollinated, and we have
and then
a lot
it's
of
more adapted to growing in the garden the next year once you've harvested it yourself and growing. So
the seeds' genetics change each year, which is so interesting and cool.
we're still like at the beginning of learning about it already, aren't we? There's so many more things.
And it's super empowering when you save your own seed, because you suddenly realise like it's actually really easy.
Yeah.
The sweet peas especially.
The sweet peas. Yeah, I just love the whole cycle of growing a sweet pea from seed and knowing I'm going to grow it, have it there, collect the seed at the end of the season. It's just, I love it.
I particularly love poppies because they're so promiscuous that we grow a couple of really interesting varieties called Amazing Grey and Pandora. And their progeny throughout the most gorgeous, interesting, you just never will know what you're going to get. And zinnias are really interesting for that too. So, and what Florette are doing with their breeding is just so inspiring and so wonderful, because bringing new forms and colour, novelty is always going to be exciting to us. You are such magpies for fresh flowers and fresh colours.
We use organic practices, don't we? We're not registered organic, but...
Yeah, we keep looking into it, but it seems like a lot of work to do. But we work with organic practices and completely chemical-free. And we do a lot of no-dig method because we have a lot of compost.
We have some lovely mesh bags that we go around and collect everything in, and they hang up in the studio till they're really dry and no moisture in them.
So we find like just at least 7 to 10 days of just drying them out a little bit further. And we find the mesh bags useful because they need to breathe. So seeds are living things, even though they don't it's just a dead plant material. They are living, breathing little moments of potential. And then once they've dried, we need to
clean them up.
So threshing comes next. And some seeds don't need it threshing; they come straight off the plant just so easily. But others, like sweet peas, you either pod or thresh.
I quite like podding my peas
threshing
by hand. It feels quite satisfying to see that pile of peas.
She's more patient than I am. Huge. And I think it goes further than kitchen garden and allotment. I think it goes into life. I think food on the table is really important. Being able to grow your own food is super empowering. But I think growing your own beauty is as vital, I think, to the nourishment of a human soul and a human life.
And you could just have a tiny pot of like a nasturtium growing on a windowsill, and the amount of joy that would bring you.
So nice. And you can eat nasturtium.
Yeah, exactly.
And seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also, if you want to just sort of start incorporating them, but you were still very much a hardcore food grower, there are so many ornamentals that are edible too. So we love pansies. Yeah. We just have such a soft spot for
and nasturtiums.
And nasturtiums we love. Yeah. And those are both useful in the kitchen. Well, sometimes decoratively, but I mean nasturtiums are delicious. And then we grow aurak, which is the great big purple one behind us.
It's in the green.
Yeah, and that's edible. And dahlia tubers are edible. I mean, I don't recommend.
Dahlia petals too, aren't they?
They are. Yeah. So there's lots of things that you can incorporate that will also...
Nigella seeds.
Nigella seeds. Okay. And petals.
Yeah.
There's loads of things that you could... And I promise you, they're only going to enhance your life and the beauty of your garden. I think in terms of rules for floristry, there are I think any kind of rule is there to be broken, to be honest. But we do a lot of floristry, and I've written a couple of books about floristry, so I've thought about ways to try and make it easy for people and accessible for people to sort of bring beauty and play around with beauty. Because it's about being curious, really, and about enjoying the colours of nature and the bounty that you've grown in your own home. And often
also finding what you love in a vase.
Yeah.
Like, you can follow the rules, but no, you just play around, grow different things every year and work out what you love.
My name is Diane Butcher and this is Jo Patterson, my colleague, and we both work here at Askham Hall Gardens in Cumbria in the north of England. We have 2 glass houses, 2 polytunnels and quite a lot of raised beds. And then beyond that we have a fruit cage, we have a pond with an orchard, and then a hotbed system which takes up another part of the garden. And then going a little further afield, we have a new project garden called the Hillside Garden, which we started last year, and that is almost allotment style, a lot of beds up there. And the produce from the gardens goes in several directions. First of all, it goes to Allium, our restaurant here at Askham Hall, and then it goes to our other sister hotels.
Yeah, so 3 different types of restaurants. There's a fine dining Michelin star restaurant, another fine dining restaurant which is more of kind of market restaurant, and then there's a gastropub up the road. Diane leads the kitchen garden. I work here 4 days a week, and then we have Sally as well, who works part-time. So we work together as a team. A lot of harvesting involved for the restaurants and continuously sowing and growing produce for the restaurants.
So when I first came here 6 years ago, I decided straight away this would be a no-dig garden. And it's really worked, and we're really happy with that. And it means that we have the raised beds in the kitchen garden here, which we mulch every year with our material that we produce from our hotbeds. We also have in the fields, we use mulching up in the Hillside Garden. Everything we grow from seed. We sometimes pop that on so that the plants are slightly bigger and the root systems have got more accomplished, so they stand a better chance of fighting the Cumbrian weather, which we haven't really talked about, but the Cumbrian weather is certainly a challenge to us in
location, yeah.
Also, the garden sits under the shadow of the hall, and for much of the winter, this kitchen garden here is actually in shade and can be frosty where everyone else may have thawed out. The kitchen garden remains a very cold area. So our growing season up here is really short. This year even more so with the late frosts we had in May. And that growing season again challenges us to find other ways of producing edible foods through those months when we can't sow into the ground direct, and we have to use the polytunnels, the glasshouse, and especially the hotbeds, which have been absolutely key to this garden right from the start. And that was just, I suppose, fortune that I came across the hotbeds, and a gentleman in Yorkshire very kindly showed me this system and how it worked, and I started to read up more about it. So the hotbeds are really key, and it's a cyclic process there because the material from the hotbeds ultimately provides the fertility that we want going back into the soil. Feeding the soil is what it's all about. Feed the soil, get your soil in good health, keep the structure of the soil. No till, no dig, it's what we're about.
Late autumn, winter, we'll empty the current hotbeds. Inside them there'll be the material from the previous year, which is partially rotted down, so we move that into another bed, which we then grow courgettes in. And then we need to refill the beds. They're very deep. We pack them full of manure from a local stable, so it's a mixture of manure and straw. So we have to pack it in. We have to make sure it's level because the level will drop as it starts to rot down, but it releases heat. We build a frame on top of it when it's cooled down enough to be able to plant on top of it and fill that with compost, and then we can plant into it. There's also some covers, lights that we call them, the sort of clear plastic covers, which just give them a bit of protection through the colder months. And we can start sowing very early, which is impossible otherwise here because of the late frosts that we get.
The chefs in the restaurant here, they want baby veg basically, which means we're harvesting young. So when you might allow your beetroot to get to a really nice size, we'll be picking them golf ball size, and the same goes for the turnips, the carrots, the leeks. But what that does mean, in effect, is that we can produce several successions through the growing period, and it's keeping that going. So it's constantly keeping records of when to sow every few weeks, as you would with your lettuces out in the garden. You'd be sowing not all at once, but over a period you'd sow every 2 or 3 weeks, and so it's quite intensive in that case. And records are key, and we keep a lot of dates going. We also produce microherbs. Again, that's quite intensive, but it's done on a regular basis, again, of sowing. And then we also grow perennial crops as well, things like salsify, horseradish.
Yeah. Lovage is a very popular one with the chefs.
And Jerusalem artichokes, of course, globe artichokes. Yeah. We're just trialling skirret at the moment. And that's the beauty of this. We're given almost a a free rein to actually go out and try as many different vegetables, be they perennial, biennial, annual, as we can. And the other thing we do is we grow a lot of edible flowers, don't we?
Yeah.
We want to make the garden beautiful. We want it to encourage as many beneficial insects as we can into the garden, natural predators. And the chefs come in and they delight in it because they come in with their trays and they'll harvest these beautiful flowers, and we know they're going literally from their tray into the hall and onto a plate and in front of someone. And the feedback we get when people come into the garden the following day having eaten in the hall is just wonderful, isn't it?
When they realise that this is where the produce has come from,
Yes.
the meal they've just had the evening before, I think it really delights people.
It does. More and more people, I think, are wanting that, to know where their food's come from, basically, and the fact that it's here on the land in Ascombe, in the Hall Gardens, means a great deal to them. I would say the harvesting is one of the favourite parts, because all that hard work is suddenly paying off. And we take a lot of care with the harvesting, don't we? We bring it to the sink. We've got some lovely sinks out here. We've got a wash station, as it were, and everything is lovely washed. And we take it in, and we're very happy to put it down in front of the chefs and hope that we can make them smile, because it makes us smile, doesn't it? To be honest, it's a joyful place to work.
Very rewarding knowing that the food that you're growing is getting used and enjoyed by a lot of people, and the chefs appreciate it.
And we also go further than the garden. We go to the woods in winter to pick the wild garlic. We go to get the sloes. Anything we can forage, we'll go out and get for them. And that, again, it's a joy.
It's good to be able to provide for them things that'd be very hard for them to get hold of, so they can use it in the cooking and be creative with it.
So the garden has definitely grown quite a bit since I came. Initially, we realised that the one polytunnel wasn't going to be enough, just because we needed to produce more as we were building up clientele in the hall and at our sister hotel. We bought a second polytunnel just over a year ago. We got our second greenhouse, which you definitely needed, because propagation, so much propagation. And then the field was actually a lockdown project, because come March everything had shut, but we were still gardening, and we knew we had this opportunity, and so we grasped it. We walk miles every day, basically. And we even have walkie-talkies now, because if we're in the field, and one of us is down here and somebody needs something, you can end up walking a long way just to find people. And we haven't really talked about the wider garden here as well. The ornamental garden has a lot of edible plants down there. It isn't just confined to the kitchen garden. We're looking wherever we can to find more and more edible flowers and herbs.
Reflect the garden in the house, in the meals and in the stay for the people.
If you've only got a small plot, don't be afraid to try and put in different plants. And mixed planting in a small plot, I think, is ideal. And just also bearing in mind, if one's got a deep root and one's got a shallow root, that's better than having them all fight for the same bit of moisture and rain and food that's within the soil. So, I would trial mixed planting, and always put some flowers in there if you can as well, bring in the insects.
For me, hotbeds were quite a revelation, really, because you're getting so much for a relatively small amount of work. You just need an area about 4 foot by 4 foot and a supply of horse muck, so ideally if you've got stables or someone with a horse nearby, because you're making use of everything. You're making use of the heat that it generates, and it also produces beautiful material you can then put back into your garden afterwards, and you can extend your season and grow a lot more. There's a little hillside orchard which we're letting the grass grow around it, and it'd be a little bit wilder. The forest gardens, we're experimenting with forest gardening, so very mixed planting, very biodiverse hopefully, to encourage wildlife in.
And we do allow things, if things set seed in places, like for example the borage this year in amongst the potatoes, as long as they're not actually on the potatoes, but we've just allowed them to continue, because nature often does it best.
Because we want a long season of produce, there's something flowering right through the year, so it must help the wildlife. We do.
We have rabbits.
We do have rabbits. We try and keep the rabbits out, but we're fairly relaxed about, in the field particularly where we've got a lot of crops, not going overboard to try and keep the wildlife out. We can leave a little bit for the wildlife.
Yeah, we share the strawberries with the blackbirds. There is plenty to go around.
It's in abundance. So I would say one of the things we do to reduce slug damage is we grow plants on in plugs and then plant them out when they're already a reasonable size, so they've got a better chance. If there is a bad infestation, we'll use nematodes. we only use biological control. We don't use any chemicals.
Yeah. We're happy to pick them off
We
the
can pick
plants
them
and
off.
feed them to the hens. As our chef is a passionate breeder of hens, and so we have quite a lot of unusual varieties, and that's very useful when it comes to slugs and snails, isn't it?
You get snacks.
We feed them snacks, yes. And the pigs take an awful lot of our produce as well.
Yeah.
The kitchen waste that is purely vegetative, we feed to our pigs, so they get an amazing diet actually. Even strawberries that are slightly rotten, they absolutely love the strawberries, don't they? I think at the moment we've got quite a lot going on with the new hillside garden and the forest, which we'd actually like to encompass the whole of that hillside garden eventually, which hence planting the shrubs, the different layers, the tree layer, and the shrub layer, and the ground cover and the perennials. So for going forward, I think we don't have the manpower
to expand
unless we took on a whole team, because to be truthful, one day we can spend literally more than half the day just harvesting.
There's quite a lot of planting that we've put in, particularly in the last year, that's going to mature, that's longer term planting, the trees, the forest garden, so that's going to mature over time and change the nature of the garden and the constant improving of the soil on the new beds.
I say growing food. Actually, no, I can't say this on camera. I'm Gaz Oakley, a chef, author and newbie grower. And I'm based in Wales, in the lovely countryside, usually surrounded by sheep, but there's none here today, so it's not giving a true representation of Wales at the minute, but so you've got lots of hills. Yeah, I haven't been growing long at all. It's been 3 years now, 3 growing seasons, and my garden's gradually getting bigger and bigger, and it's sort of become everything to me. I'm so grateful for getting into gardening and growing food, but my first passion, my first love was cooking. Cooked as a child with my dad, and then got my first chef's job age 15 part-time after school. Learning the skills that I use to this day, and then at 16 I went full-time. My dream was to get a Michelin star, be the youngest chef ever with a Michelin star. It didn't quite work out. I still have dreams of getting one maybe one day in the future, but yeah, I was right in the deep end in fine dining restaurants, learning my craft like a sponge, learning from the chefs around me, soaking up all that knowledge. And but fast forward today, I now have a cooking show on YouTube, and now I feel so much more connected with the food through growing it. To tell you the truth, when I was in the kitchens, we didn't really, I certainly didn't have the close connection as I do now with my ingredients back then, because you don't see the patience, you don't see the nurture, you don't see the time and the effort that's gone into growing the ingredients. You just get them. And obviously you're amazed when you see beautiful organic carrots or whatever, any ingredients that come into the kitchen, and you're taught not to waste a single scrap. So you do appreciate them, but you don't see that journey from seed to harvest. So you're less likely to appreciate it as much as you do when you grow them yourself. Yeah, it's been 3 years now growing food. I think that is something that I'll do for the rest of my life. I'm already sort of thinking of ways in which I can continue to grow food on the scale that I do during the summer times in the winter time. So I'm already thinking about maybe going to work at farms overseas in the winter, somewhere sunny. I love it so much. I can't put it into words how much I love growing food. Well, the initial reason I started growing food was because I wanted to gain some sort of independence and self-sufficiency after being in lockdown in London in my small apartment. I just felt like I felt helpless, and I felt I was so reliant on all the institutions that were set up, whether that's having to go to the supermarket to get my food or everything else that we're reliant on. I didn't feel like I was in control of anything. So it got to a point where I thought I have to start growing food and knowing where my food is coming from. So that was 3 years ago, and it's the same sort of mission now. It's having that independence. I love being able to harvest my dinner. I love being able to feed my family with my homegrown produce and give it to my neighbours and trade it for things that they're growing. And I want to go back to that, and I really want to encourage people to do the same. So it was that sort of motivation to be self-sufficient and less reliant on the big infrastructure that's set up. Growing food is changed the way I cook completely, because now I don't necessarily, I only plan the recipes when I know what's ready to harvest. So right now I know I've got a load of beetroot, so I need to make something with it. What am I going to do with them? And it's exciting to then brainstorm a load of beetroot recipes, and that is how I want to live. And when I have my restaurant, I want the menu to be based off what's there and what's ready to harvest only. So it's completely changed how I cook. I tend not to overcomplicate things now when I'm cooking, because I want the vegetables and the produce to shine. So try not to do too much with it. Yeah, the feeling of harvesting produce that I've grown and then cooking with it right away is beautiful. So you go from one really calming aspect of growing it to another calming aspect of cooking. The two go hand in hand, and now I feel like totally zen. There's nothing more healing and relaxing when I can just step away from it and get into the garden. It's like a total reset, and just, you know, a day of walking around barefoot in the garden and having my hands in the soil is enough of a sort of therapeutic relaxation thing that I do just to get my mind back on track. It's beautiful. I think just keep things simple. So, you know, let's talk about, you just mentioned runner beans. The best way to eat runner beans, in my opinion, is just a snack on them. They just taste so fresh and delicious. But what I love to do with those is just get a griddle pan really hot and just slightly char them and drizzle over a little chili oil or something like that. And, you know, that's all it really needs. And if you can cook over fire, amazing, because, you know, that wood-fired smoky element will add a delicious twist on any of your ingredients. So then you don't need to add anything on top. You just need to sort of grill them, and that's it, barbecue them. So just keep them simple. With kohlrabi, you mentioned, I just grate that and add some lemon juice and some seasoning, and it's like a lovely, refreshing slaw. Keep things simple. Add some herbs from the garden. Find a herb that you really like and throw it into a dish, and you know you're going to like it because you like the herb already. So keep things simple. Cooking outside is that I was sort of forced into it, because my kitchen isn't suitable to filming for my YouTube channel. So at first I was a total city boy and novice cooking over fire. It was funny looking back at those old videos, but now it's something that I feel is almost innate in a human experience, you know, cooking over fire, and it draws everyone in. But I love the fact that I can just harvest and then walk 2 meters, and then I can put that ingredient on the fire and cook it. And if you've got space for a little fire pit or a barbecue or something like that, get it in the garden, because you can instantly cook things. Recently, we just harvested a load of potatoes, and I turned to my cameraman and friend Tom and just said, "Oh, shall I just roast these on the fire?" And he's like, "Yeah, all right then." And we did that, and it was like the most delicious potato we'd ever eaten. So having that portable kitchen or fire pit right by you, I think is essential in all gardens, because that smoke, people do so much. You know, there's all these electronic gadgets to incorporate smoke into food these days, but when you just cook over fire, it's naturally getting smoked. You know, I've been inspired by your second garden, or your huge farm. Actually, I really would love a bit of flat land because I'm on this hill, to sort of increase my growing potential, and also welcome people to the area that I grow, because I'm sure, you know, like you do, Hugh, you get people from all around the world asking, can I come and help out on the farm, or can I come and help you out? And that would be amazing to welcome people. So I'd definitely like to expand. I'm not thinking that's going to be next year, but yeah, you're always learning, aren't you? That's something that I've realised, even being with Charles Dowding last week. It's like realising that he's been growing for 40 years and he's still learning to this day. But I think I want to grow more flowers, way more flowers. I want to have a real dedicated, massive herb garden. I can't believe that I haven't got a herb garden. It's really silly. I just have herbs dotted around in pots, but why haven't I got a massive patch of herbs? I want to expand my terrace garden slightly. The chickens won't be too happy, but that I want to do that. And I really want to grow some proper melons next year. I've got a few watermelon, but they don't seem to be doing brilliantly, so a load of melons, I think. Yeah, the chickens, they're rescue hens, so they're over 18 months old, and at that point they get sent to slaughter in the egg industry because they're thought to not produce eggs as frequently as they should do, which is crazy to think, because since they got here they've been laying an egg every day. Now they're only laying 3 a day because I think they're escaping and they're laying them in the woods, but that's fine. But I've just been giving them to my friends, family, neighbours, postmen, whoever. I haven't eaten them because, you know, I think that a plant-based diet is really helping me thrive as a person. It's not for everyone. I don't think there's a diet that is suitable for everyone out there. I think everyone has their own issues that they need to deal with, and diet is an important part to play in people's lives and making them feel good. But for me, it makes me feel good, so if it's not broken, there's no point fixing it at the minute, so I just stick to it. And when you're eating organic produce that I've grown myself, I actually have never felt better ever. So yeah, I'm happy with where I'm at with my diet. My dream going forward would be to, and this is down the line because it's going to take a lot of organisation, but my dream has always been to have my own restaurant. But now, since getting into growing food, it's changed because I'm going to need to have the farm on site. And that's hard to find, you know, a restaurant with suitable land near it to grow the food. The trouble, I think, I want to spend most of the time in the garden rather than in the kitchen. But I think I'll create a concept where I can then invite people to come and learn how to grow food, bring experts in like yourself, Hugh, and hopefully you can do like a master class from time to time, and then be able to serve the people that are visiting some lovely food that I've grown. And I wouldn't want to do it on the scale of what I first had in mind, which was like 100 covers a day in the centre of a big city, you know, really working hard in the kitchens and everyone working for me, you know, having to do the 80-hour weeks again. I wouldn't want to do that again. I want this to be like a real relaxing, tranquil experience for not only the people that work with me, but the guests that come. So, you know, we'll walk them around the gardens first. We'll harvest the ingredients together. They spend the day, they're having an experience with me, and then I serve the food. But I'll probably get to a point where I always joke that, like, you know how tasty peas are when you pick them, and it's like, if you leave them for longer than 10 minutes, almost that sweetness is just slightly dialed down a bit. I want to like pick some peas and then put them on a plate and just be like, here's your starter. Like, do nothing to them. I'll probably just get to a point where I'm just serving raw veg on a plate because I'm so enthusiastic about how tasty the produce tastes right from picking that probably be no cooking involved. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, that's the master plan in the future. A place where I can invite people for a real experience of growing and cooking. Big mistakes in growing. Well, to be honest with you, just before I moved here, I had a crash course in the YouTube University of growing food. Thankfully, finding your videos, Hugh, and you know, the other amazing gardeners on YouTube, I felt like I had a wealth of experience, and that's the beauty of YouTube. And I'm so grateful for your videos, Hugh, and everyone else that shares growing food, because it's a life skill that so many people, I think, would improve so many people's lives. It's really improved mine growing food. So the fact that there's people like yourself, Hugh, putting this free knowledge out there is incredible. So thank you, first thing. But in terms of mistakes I made, well, I started off with just one raised bed and I planted about 20 different things in there. I had all row lines, and then, as you know, when it all grows, it just all takes over one another, and I was scared to sort of thin things out because I didn't want to cut my babies, it felt. So, you know, I had all these twisted carrots and tiny parsnips and whatnot, so that wasn't very smart. I feel it's been quite smooth, and actually I don't think anything is a mistake, so you just learn not to do that next time. So it's always just a lesson, I think. But I say growing food, actually no, I can't say this on camera, but it comes natural. Growing food, it feels like a natural thing to do. So I've just taken to it. I've just really taken to it, and people are surprised when they come to my garden. Even in the second year, they were surprised at where I was at, considering it was only my second year of growing. But I just say to people, it comes natural. So I'm definitely one of these people that is like very determined, and when I set myself a goal, I will do everything I can to do it to the best of my ability. So, whether that's cooking or training or growing food, I really could have just settled with a couple of beds, but I want to grow loads of food. So I really invest time and any spare time I have, I'm out in the garden trying to get better and grow more and grow tastier food. But what I really realized I could have done is, back when I lived in London, I had a small balcony. I could have grown an abundance of food just in buckets. I just thought you needed a big space to grow food, but what I've learned is that you can grow ingredients in pretty much any vessel, really, as long as you have good soil and some sunlight, and you can nurture the plants. I just wish I got into it sooner, and you had that green finger back when I had my place in London. It probably would have given me some mental clarity, just being able to go outside and pick some kale that's in a plant pot. So I think that sometimes if people are new to gardening, they see a lovely garden like this or your amazing garden, Hugh, sometimes people will think they need a colossal space, but you've showed on numerous times that you can grow in abundance just in a small 1 meter by 2 meter bed, and it can be done. And I really want to inspire people to do that in their gardens at home or on their balconies. So what I'm trying to show people and tell people is that they need to turn their lawns into farms.
So we're here at Glasbren. Glasbren means sapling in Welsh, and we're a community-based social enterprise based here at my family farm, Bronhael Farm, in West Wales near Carmarthen. And Steph and I together run a 1 acre no-dig agroecological market garden, and we feed 50 households-ish between the rivers Tav in the west and Towy in the east every week, with a box of freshly harvested and cut vegetables and fruits and herbs. This was kind of the logical continuation of the home garden that was already here, kind of above the polytunnel here. That was the original farm vegetable garden. So I just kind of continued from there, but this land looked very much like this pasture we have over here, kind of heavily grazed, and because of the nature of the land, it was sloping in both directions, and it's got heavy clay soil, and a lot of the good soil from the top had kind of made its way down to the bottom of the hills. So yeah, it sort of presented a lot of interesting design challenges and how to make best use of what is essentially marginal land, and how to turn that into a kind of multi-tiered, productive, flourishing market garden, basically. A couple of years ago, when we had that big dry spell in the summer, we were really caught out by a lack of water, basically. We're on a well here, so the well got really low, and we suddenly found ourselves in quite an emergency situation trying to keep the crops alive. So over the last couple of years, we've been thinking a lot about how we can harness the heaps of rainwater that we get here in Wales when we do have it, and store it up in the garden. So one of those ways is that we've got a system of IBCs. These are just second-hand IBCs that you can pick up. They're 1,000 litres each, and we catch rainwater off the packing shed up the top of the hill, and using the natural hillside, the natural fall of the land, we use gravity to just transport that water from IBC to IBC at different stages through the garden, so that we have water accessible and available at different points where we need it. We still mostly water by hand, which is kind of a choice that we've made. For us, it's a way of kind of keeping a watch over the whole garden. It's a way of it's almost like a ceremonial thing. It's a way of us kind of feeding the plants and giving back what we take out. And so to do that, we also have these blue barrels, also second-hand from agricultural waste, that we run the water into those, so that it's really easy to just dunk a watering can in, fill it with water, and then away you go. And so yeah, it's just more and more. We've got about, I think, 6,000 or 7,000 litres stored in the garden right now, And the polytunnels also run exclusively on rainwater. And we want to have more and more really, so that we really feel like if another drought came, if we had 6 weeks or 2 months without rainwater, we could survive. My background really was from permaculture. You know, I'm trained through the permaculture way of doing things, which is has had to be adapted definitely for this context, for a more productive market garden context, and bringing in some other schools of thought as well. But ultimately, at the heart, at the core of this is the ideas around permaculture. So, yeah, observation, interaction, working with what you have, and working with nature, letting the way the forest grows be the guide really.
So one of our passions here at Glassbren is keeping a variety of plants in amongst the vegetables and a lot of flowers, because not only do we use them for our bunches for our boxes, but they're good for the insects, good for biodiversity, and then also it makes it look beautiful. So dotted around the farm we've got a lot of perennials like this sea buckthorn. Now the good thing about this plant is that it's a nitrogen fixer, and it also produces these delicious nutritious berries. The reason we've got a lot of perennials around the vegetables is so that the root systems keep this great mycelium network for nutrients and water, and it replicates what's there in the wild. So we're growing our veg, copying what's out there in the wild.
The thing that led me into doing this was kind of thinking about bigger issues in relation to the environment, climate change, biodiversity loss, and looking at why, you know, what are the core reasons behind that. And I think for me it was all about a profound disconnection from the natural world. And so for myself and in the work that we do, I wanted to do something that would bring myself back into a deep relationship with the natural world. And I think food growing and the kind of traditional life ways that are involved in it, and the way people have lived on land forever, seemed like a really simple way we could all start to reconnect with our local land and with our seed and with our foods, and start to feel that kind of love and appreciation for the natural world that supports us and feeds us, and a way that everybody can kind of get into that together, you know. And so I started to see kind of how food growing in my own life could be my way of deepening my relationship with the natural world, but also how we could bring people onto the land and start to offer that to other people, and offer it through the boxes as well. You know, the opportunity to eat with the seasons and have a connection with your local farmers, and have a connection with your local soil, and do something that was regenerative in the local area basically.
So we enjoy being more intuitive with our gardening here, which means we really get to understand what our soil health is and what plants work well with each other. And so sometimes we get a bit more experimental with things. So here we've got some beetroot growing with some sweet corn, and it turned out really well. Also, what we like to do is we like to keep some of our plants going to seed. So this coriander here, not only is a good pollinator, but also is going to produce some amazing seeds for us, which we can save for next year.
Yeah, so I think the main thing I've probably learned is the power of growing food together. It's like how much of a different experience farming and growing food can be if you do it with other people, if you come to rely on each other, if you come to support each other, and just how much of a different lifestyle it can be, and how much healthier it can be, and how much more fun and vibrant it can be. And just having time, you know, time to live and time to enjoy and time to feel in connection to this place, instead of just kind of in a productivity mindset, you know, just trying to produce as much veg, you know, looking at the bottom line, but actually enjoying the experience of doing it, and actually feeling like I'm in relationship with this place and I'm learning from it and it's teaching me. And I suppose the important point is that I came up from being a home grower, and I just scaled up what I was doing as a home grower, essentially, with some tweaks and tricks and things I learned from other market gardeners. But yeah. Here at the garden we don't dig, we don't till, we don't turn the soil in any way. We operate on a no-dig system, so we have all these series of permanent raised beds, basically, where we grow the food with wood chip paths in between. And the reason for that is no dig is much better for the soil, much better for the soil structure, keeping that structure in place, keeping all the life and microorganisms in place, and just adding a fresh layer of organic matter after every crop, much like the forest, the way that the forest makes soil. And yeah, it's really helping us in the way that it's much easier, it's a lot less work, It's much better for weed pressure, we have a lot less weeds, and much better for water retention. And also in terms of harvesting veg for the veg boxes, we're finding the veg comes off a lot cleaner as well, you know, we're not having to wash the crops.
So the great thing about compost heaps is that you can use whatever you've got around on the farm or on your own land. What we like to do is we like to use some manure, some old crops that have gone to seed, some comfrey, and then some like kitchen household waste, which we've got here. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to add some manure onto this to add the bacteria into the compost heap. And the key thing is to make it all into layers, because we want to get as much heat as possible for it to break down. So I've got some manure on there now. I'm going to add some of the comfrey that we picked earlier. And we're lucky enough to have a lot of wood chip on this farm. And wood chip on its own is quite acidic for the ground. So what we like to do is we like to leave it for about 6 months, and then it breaks down, and then we add it to the compost heap. So the idea of this is we're going to layer it up, and there's going to be a variety of different things in there. There's going to be some green stuff, some brown, some wood chip, and then in about a month's time you can have this beautiful, delicious compost that we can use. So what we have here is a compost heap that we made about a month ago, and it's gone through different stages of heat temperatures to really rot down everything inside. And I've got my trusted thermometer here, which I use on a regular basis for my compost heaps. I just put it in there, and this is going to show about 35 to 40 degrees, and it's really nice warm to the touch. But you want to get it to around 60 degrees a few times to get it really rotting down. Now this here is a mixture of those layers from before, and all the greenery has just has gone really, and it's just this delicious compost that we can use straight away now onto the ground.
So yeah, here we are in the seed house, the Tihadai. This is where all our propagation and seed saving and seed drying happens. And seeds are really important to us here because, as you know, it's really the bedrock of the whole operation. It's where our food comes from. And I'm particularly interested in kind of the stories in seed and the people that have saved seeds in the past and have passed it on, and kind of protecting that kind of genetic diversity and protecting the stories and protecting the history embedded in the seed, and making sure that we use only open pollinated seeds, so seeds pollinated by bees and other insects, organic seeds, seeds sourced locally, to try and kind of do a little sort of small pushback against the power of the major seed companies and corporations trying to reduce seed to just a handful of varieties. We've started a seed circle recently locally with a bunch of us, so we're now hopefully working to a point where together we can save the whole spectrum of seeds without having to do them all ourselves, which makes it a bit easier in terms of isolation and just sharing the load really. So I think people can put up barriers and limitations to them being able to get into fruit growing, or kind of become a bit fixed on the proper way to do things, and I think, yeah, one of the core takeaways for me from doing this in a more kind of intuitive, instinctual way, is that if you grow food, if you make the focus of your growing food being in relationship with the garden and observing and interacting and yeah, really just letting the garden teach you, then I think there doesn't need to be any limits, and there's no doing things wrong, because things are going to go well and things are going to go not so well, and I think you just have to, as part of accepting the reality of food growing, it's part of living with the seasons, with the changing nature of the Welsh climate here, and yeah, and almost like surrendering really to something that we can't control ultimately. We're not in control. We can just try our best to understand and have a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of background to help us have the best chance of having a good crop out of the garden, but ultimately there are other forces at work.
This is the rewilded garden at Knepp. It's a wall garden, and it was a croquet lawn about 2.5 years ago. And at Knepp is the site of the oldest rewilding project in the UK, and a lawn wasn't really cutting it in terms of diversity of habitat that we'd like to see in a garden. So we took various cues from the wider landscape, the animals and their interactions with the landscape and what has happened, and we tried to mix it up in here as gardeners, as the keystone species in a garden. So we've varied the topography, we've changed the soil types by using the materials that we've got available. We're trying to think all the time in terms of mosaics, or kaleidoscopes is the word that we like to use here, because that implies that there's some movement. The movement is really key in a functioning ecosystem. So we take all our cues from out there, and we, as the keystone species, we steer it in the direction that we'd like to see in terms of maximising biodiversity, which is the end goal with this garden experiment. So we know that uniformity is sort of not really seen in nature that often. So what we try to do is vary the topography as much as we can. So just by varying the topography, creating lumps and bumps, we get that variation of ecological conditions. So at the bottom, that's where the water falls, that's where it's really wet, and this area through here is flooded for about 4 months of the year. And then at the top, that's where it's driest. We've got shady bits, we've got sunny bits on the south side, and then different bands of productivity in our soils. And that's where we've tried to add various materials that we had available to us. And we've just built a new cafe and shop. And on that site, we had a few farm buildings which don't exist anymore, and they are here. This is nearly a completely crushed farm building, and all of these plants growing out of it. So you've got really harsh, alkaline, concretey conditions in here, right the way through to our good old Wealden clay. There's 320 metres of it underneath our feet, and the water just sits. It's really sticky, really sort of nutritious, but you know, a lot of nutrients get locked up because it's so anaerobic quite a lot of the time. So you've got that transition of different conditions. So in terms of mosaics, we've got different pieces here dotted around. And the thought behind that is that the wider range of conditions that you've got, the more plants that you can grow, the more wildlife we can hopefully support. So we're very clear, this is an experiment. We're not saying it's the silver bullet, but we are trying to think outside the box with our approach to gardens. How can we make a garden as biodiverse as we can make it? So that's why we're trying all sorts of different things. And as I said, the end goal was maximising the number of species that we have here. And from our baseline invertebrate surveys that we conducted three years ago, we jumped by 33%. So hopefully we're going in the right direction. We're looking at the soil, taking baseline data in terms of the soil as well. So we're looking at the microfauna under a microscope, seeing how that changes. How can concrete become a living soil? It's going to be really, really interesting to see. But monitoring is really part of it. It's an experiment, and we're getting data from that. We look at the plants that just turn up of their own accord, and we as gardeners, we curate them. So quite a lot of things that people are so rude to call weeds, things like ribwort plantain and scentless mayweed, and there's a buddleia through there, and look at that wild carrot floating through there. We assess the role that they can play in this ecosystem, where we, the gardener, are the keystone species. How many species can they support? Do they look nice? Do they have a deep taproot that's going to break through our really compacted clay? You know, what do they have a place in this ecosystem? And we've got over 100 of those plants that just popped up, which most people, I suppose, would probably get rid of, and we curate them. Sometimes we will go in there with the hedging shears, browse them down when they're about to go to seed and go everywhere, but they still have a place here. I mean, we see ourselves as our small garden team as a herd of herbivorous animals sort of walking through the landscape and grazing, essentially, nibbling away at things, because it's that constant interaction that rewilding is built on. A lot of people think rewilding is just close the gate and walk away and let it just get on with it, but you need those natural processes, and that's a really key phrase, and that's what inspires this whole project. People come through the gate and they think, this isn't really what I thought rewilding to be. You know, gardens are unique, quite domestic contexts. You know, it's not pure ecological restoration out there. If this is going to be a sort of model for what people can do in their own gardens, we're not going to just chuck in a whole lot of Tamworth pigs and let them have a right old go. we're trying to see what we as gardeners can do, what is applicable to other garden sites. So really rewilding the garden is a shift in mindset. And you know, if rewilding is restoring natural processes and creating these sort of kaleidoscopes of different habitats, then can you rewild a garden? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And it's just not usually what people expect to see. You know, quite a lot of the plants in here are from further south in Europe or from more sort of Mediterranean climates. And the reason we plant those alongside native plants is to pack out that opportunity, extend the season as long as we can. You know, for something like an echinacea here, to our pollinating insects, there's one on my face right now, this is just another composite flower structure. It's a native family, and they can access what they need from it. It's just, you know, you get some insects that are pretty picky, and so that's why we grow plants that they're going to lay their eggs on, most likely to. When people come to Knepp, they expect a little bit of, you know, something different. So if we were in a sort of National Trust garden or something like that, it might, I don't know, you'd get probably a visitorship that might be more critical. But I think it's been received pretty well so far. But we still like trying to shock people at times. You can absolutely use this approach and grow food too. I mean, what we're doing next door in our kitchen garden is we're trying to do just that. If you think all the time about your garden as a mosaic, if you think in terms of layers from a variety of different vegetation structures, you can get that in. Quite a lot of the shrubs we've got next door are things like currants and unusual edibles, things like we've got dead man's fingers, which is this sort of sausage fruit type shrub, right through to a sort of edible ground layer. We've really tried to think outside the box in terms of the things that we could eat, but not just stuff that we could eat, other things like rosaceous fruit, which birds might like. If we bring them in, they might have a high chance of eating things that might be eating our veg too. That's the thought. So if you just think in terms of mosaics, it's up to you what you do with that sort of variety of different structures, and that's what we've been trying to play with next door. So we hope that this experiment might inspire our visitors, and they might be inspired to use the very unique context of your own gardens to do similar things to hopefully see an uplift in wildlife. And we do have plenty of workshops and tours and open days here, which you can book through our website, when we're looking into the design of the garden, you know, how we planted it, but also how we manage it, how we record biodiversity. And we do a series of workshops in recording or monitoring biodiversity with Kate Bradbury, a wildlife gardening author. We also have ecology tours looking at garden ecology too, and also growing veg. And we do that in collaboration with our market garden over the other side of the estate. So I hope that you might be able to come and visit and be inspired.
I'm Sina. I'm one of the growers here at Knepp Market Garden.
My name's Rosanna, and we manage the market garden together. And we're here to supply the Wilding Kitchen shop with lots of produce throughout the season.
So Knepp is this, it used to be an arable dairy farm, and now it's a pioneering rewilding project, 20 odd years old. Really successful in creating biodiversity, lots of species have come back. Recently they've opened this shop and cafe, the Wilding Kitchen and Shop, and we're here to supply them basically, and that's why there's a market garden here.
Yeah.
We're very much linked with this new venture.
And this is a kind of tiny corner of the Knepp estate where I think in a way the rewilding project's flipped on its head. The rewilding project is this focus on biodiversity with the byproduct of food, and here we're really focusing on producing as much food as we can, and then the biodiversity is sort of the byproduct. So we really try to protect that as much as we can with the focus on food. It expands that idea of what can land management look like, and how do we produce food in a way that works really well with supporting as many species as possible.
So we started here in March 2022.
Yeah.
Just the two of us. I think one of the things we've enjoyed a lot is the team expanding and building a team.
Yeah.
Having Ali and Sophie with us this year makes a huge difference.
I think in terms of starting a site from the beginning, I feel like we get the opportunity to really grow with the space and understand it in much more intricate detail than coming into an established system. So sort of figuring out what we think works really well.
So we were lucky to have a season before the Wilding kitchen and shop opened. So there's this, which was nice to get a little head start and get ourselves established. But then that relationship evolving now and sort of getting closer and closer in us sort of sometimes telling the chefs what to cook with, but them also telling us what to grow, and that dynamic is really interesting. It's not an easy one for sure, but it's really quite rewarding.
Clay is definitely our biggest challenge, and I think the past 2 winters have been really wet, so drainage is definitely a challenge. I think we didn't have so much experience with cover cropping and undersowing before we came here. We sort of knew about it theoretically and worked a little bit with it on other farms, but that really feels like where we're seeing the biggest successes, where we've got diverse living roots in the ground over winter. We're definitely seeing better drainage, easier to work with the following year, and it feels like the method that works well. It gives us the opportunity to choose like chicory and the cover crops to have those deep roots penetrating down.
The first spring we were here was like quite hot and dry and sort of nice. Then it was wet last year, and this year it was really wet. So I think it's also about accepting a bit more that this is not a site for super early cropping, or we might try to get some crops in the ground early, but sort of accepting that it takes a long time to warm up, but then it also stays warmer in autumn, so maybe that's more our window.
Within the fence, the market garden's 3 acres, and we're with the Soil Association, so we follow a classic 6-block crop rotation, and we manage the outdoor production in 2 different ways. So I mentioned the cover cropping, but we till one half of it and try to do a lot of undersowings and cover crop in between the vegetables and ask plants to do the work of protecting the soil for us. And then the other side, I would say no dig style, because we're not putting on a huge amount of compost, but we're not tilling. Yeah, so really thinking about the soil as leading our practices, and how can we build more life in the soil and build topsoil.
And then we're sat in the propagation tunnel, or in the tunnel that's half propagation, so we grow everything from seed, and then it's sort of half, a bit of tomatoes, a bit of tomatillos, flowers behind us. Then we have a brand new multi-span, sort of triple span tunnel.
Well, the frame is second-hand.
The frame is second-hand, that's true, but it's new to us.
Yeah, new to us.
And 4 caterpillar tunnels as well. So I think coming from that market garden in Denmark, supplying restaurants in Copenhagen, and coming here, and there's a restaurant, we're very much about the food side of it, and we're very, we like to eat and like good food. So that was like the main thing before. Obviously, being at NEP in the middle of a rewilding project and sort of constantly hearing about like, oh, now this rare species of butterfly has been sighted, or we get these like constant reminders of the environment around us and nature, and taking care of that.
There's some napa cabbages that are nearly ready. Very exciting.
That's right. Sorry.
That is exciting. Thanks, Sophie.
And I mean, we've also come from wanting to use regenerative practices and care about the soil and all of those things, but I feel like that's been highlighted being here.
Yeah, it definitely puts it into a new perspective. I think when we were studying, the word clean gets used a lot, like, clean rows, like clean edges, everything needs to be clean. And I feel like that's been, and I think that also lends itself to the quite you want things to be perfect, you want them to be neat. I feel like my approach to weeding has been rewilded a bit, essentially. It's we sort of started to learn about we get quite a lot of scarlet pimpernel in the garden, which is the turtle doves feed on the seeds, which I didn't know before I came here. But all these little nuggets of information, I think, really overall do affect the decisions we make in the garden. I think we definitely leave more wilder edges, and sort of more plants is better and more is more, essentially. And as long as the crop is thriving, and as long as, you know, we don't want the nettles to kind of go to town, or we don't want to have loads of perennial weeds, but essentially it's more roots in the ground feeding the microbes, and that's great. So.
And I still love a perfectly spaced, straight plants. So we're growing cat flowers to sell in the shop, and also to dress the tables in the cafe. But they are spread throughout the garden, so that when there are flowers I don't pick in time, they work a bit as a companion planting as well. It's just about, I guess it's both about creating habitat. I think it's also for sort of visual appearance of the garden, that it's nice to have flowers around while we're working.
Yeah, definitely. I think we sort of manage within the beds and around the beds very differently. We've just sized our wildflower meadow at the top, but we're removing the hay from that, so it's quite trying to make a more nutrient poor space with it, so it's a different habitat. And then the herb garden again is a very different sort of space in terms of what plants can thrive. So I think trying to have these different spaces to create more opportunities for different plants, different species to thrive.
And I think a way this site might develop is that we've sort of purely grown annuals in the space, and thought we just need to get some cropping going, get to know the site. But I'd love to break it up for some more perennial features. So that's definitely on the cards, I think.
Yeah. I hope we can have some time this winter to make a plan where we could be planting some out late winter, early spring. And I think I sort of think of that both as part of a drainage strategy in a way, with having more roots in the ground. But I think it's a challenge with what would survive over a wet winter. So there's definitely some planning. But I'd hope that might be something someone coming by next year would see.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, this being year 3, we've sort of been building on consistently, and I feel like next year might look like not expanding the vegetable production much, but trying to open the doors a bit more, do a bit more public engagement. We have started doing tours this year, but we'd love for more people to come round.
I think the thing I think about in a year like this one, where we've had a really challenging spring, lots of slugs, it can be so demotivating to put a lot of effort into something like this. But I think the sort of thing about diversity and growing things that you love to grow are so worth it. And even if there's a lot of loss at the beginning, persevering kind of gives you that even greater sense of achievement. And it's hard, but it's so worth doing. And I think really, like any act of trying to grow some vegetables or herbs, even if it's a tiny space, it's just so worth doing. It can give so much. Maybe you'd see some Indian runner ducks in the spring if you came round, which is what we'd really like to do to get on top of the slug problem. That would be, if we achieved that, that'd be great. Yeah.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Laurie, and this is Freedom Forest, which is our 3 acres of land in the southeast of England. And our mission here is to grow as much of our own food as we can.
We came across this land after I had been away travelling and experienced many beautiful places in the world, and I realised one of the most important things was to people around the world is having land, and so a connection to the land was very important to me. So I used to go out walking on the footpaths with an Ordnance Survey map. I was actually doing some training for a mountain leader qualification at the time, and down a little out the way footpath I came across a bit of overgrown land with a sign with a telephone number on, and the rest is history really.
So me and Dan met when I applied for a gardening job, and
Dan was actually the head gardener and employed me.
I already had the land for 2 or 3 years, and I'd been already at that stage beginning to create my dream version of paradise.
And where Dan had a huge passion for staying in the jungle, the only area that he had created here, really when I came along, was he had begun to plant his own jungle here in the UK. And you were trying to grow a few crops like potatoes and things like that, but it wasn't going very well because we have a bit of a nemesis of sheep sorrel here, and it would take over absolutely everything. Because I had a huge passion for growing food and cooking, that then we looked into different methods of how we could start utilising the land to grow a lot more food. I had actually been living in New Zealand for 7 years, and then I moved back to the UK, and that was why I was applying for work in the UK again. And my journey in New Zealand had been really eye-opening, actually. That's where I first learned about permaculture. I was living in this really cool town, and there was quite a lot of people that were practicing permaculture, and there was a place that ran permaculture courses locally, and so it was just quite a big thing there. And I was really lucky to have some close friends who were really into permaculture, so that was kind of my initial introduction to permaculture. I actually worked with a lady who had an amazing permaculture garden, and I used to work from her house. So at lunchtime I used to go out and just pick stuff from her garden to make salads and things like that up for lunch. And I remember being really fascinated when she would tell me the story about how they planted all the fruit trees on the land before they even started building the house. And that to me at the time seemed really foreign, because it just would always feel like you should be focusing on your house first. The ethics of permaculture that I've learned since place more importance on growing food and establishing all your trees, and it really makes sense now. I've got my head around it as well, because all your fruit trees need so much time to establish, so actually by the time you've moved in, then you can reap the benefits of your garden just exactly when you need it. So that was a really lovely introduction for me. And whilst I was creating my own veg patch and really getting into growing more and more food, I was then learning about permaculture at the same time. And so I was kind of changing from conventional gardening and starting to introduce companion planting and things like that. So it was quite difficult when I left my house in New Zealand and left my veg patch and the orchard that I had started behind. But then I was lucky enough to come across Freedom Forest and Dan.
After I actually left my job and my career, which I had worked really hard to achieve, to go and stay with some of the last remote tribes around the world and experience their life firsthand, and just how they can live in a sustainable way in the landscape without destroying it. And that really began my journey of being interested in living a life closer to nature and sustainable farming as well. A few of the core things, I guess, that I could take away from my experience staying with the tribes is that, first of all, their connection to the land and the fact that they're very happy to still live a more simple way of life. And many still choose to live a simple way of life, even though they could adopt many more modern things, which would mean using a lot more resources. This land was sat here for decades and no one had seen any potential in it, because it was a north-facing slope and just covered in bramble and stuff, so it wasn't seen as really suitable for agriculture or anything really. But it had an acre of native woodland, which was my main interest because I love the forest, and all I was actually looking for at that time was a bit of forest where I could go to and do bushcraft and have fires without worrying about someone ringing the council that I'm having a fire and someone turning up. So that was a beautiful thing for me, and I didn't realise the beauty of having some of the more open areas as well. Initially I was just going to plant the entire thing as forest, and as time progressed and I met Laurie, we decided that starting to grow some food in the more open areas would be a really good idea as well.
And that literally just progressed one bed at a time. Because the growing conditions weren't great here, mainly due to the sheep sorrel, we had to think outside of the box for how we could make the land usable. And that's when we first came across the Back to Eden methods of gardening, which then followed into no dig. And then we started bringing in more of the aspects of permaculture as well.
So Back to Eden, we came across a video of a guy in America years ago, and he was struggling to grow small annual plants, yet he was seeing these ginormous trees thriving, 50, 60 metres tall, with no care for them whatsoever. And he wandered in and really looked deeper into it, and just bent down and took a handful of the soil and just saw how rich and beautiful it was. And these were only being watered from the rain. So he realised and wanted to kind of explore using a forest floor type soil on top of the ground to try and recreate some of the ways that you can grow such amazing big trees.
So Paul Gauci was the name of the guy who I think pretty much invented Back to Eden, and how he had replicated the method of the forest floor was by using mainly wood chips. And we are really lucky here that we actually have a greenway site quite nearby, and so we started bringing in as many wood chips as we could, and we ended up getting some big plastic sheets over the winter and laying those out over the first beds that we created, just to break down the weed growth a little bit more. And then the next season we did our first plantings into that bed, and everything grew really well.
One of the very recent plants I've started growing, which was a complete project of passion, was trying taro in the UK. And I went around scouring to find as many different varieties as I could. And I've been narrowing it down now, and I've found a few varieties which are actually producing some really nice corms for us here in our temperate climate.
And we're growing these both undercover in the polytunnel and outdoors, and actually I think from next year we've decided we're only going to be growing these particular varieties outside, because they're performing well enough outside that we don't need to give them the precious space of the polytunnel, which is really amazing.
I think my attitude to self-sufficiency is not to go back in time and live like a caveman and have complete lack of everything, but to embrace some of the modern things and luxuries that we have, but also trying to bring in plants and crops from around the world, which maybe aren't well known or utilised, to create a new way of being self-sufficient in a temperate climate, which hasn't been possible to our ancestors in the past.
So self-sufficiency for me has really just become a way of life that feels really natural, and to me it feels like what we should be doing and how we should be taking care of ourselves. I used to struggle a lot with mental health actually, and I couldn't understand why I had such good jobs, but I never felt complete. I always wanted to be at home tending my garden and growing food, but society had taught me that that wasn't what we were supposed to do. As my journey has unfolded here at Freedom Forest, I realise now that this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and it just feels so human to be taking care of ourselves as much as we can, and growing food is just the most beautiful thing that you can do for yourself, and providing fresh, organic, healthy food for your body to nurture your mind and your soul, and also to share with your loved ones is just, I think that that's the best gift that you can give yourself and anybody in your life.
And I too, like many in our society, I used to feel like I'm absolutely fine, I'm a positive thinker and I'm great, there's nothing wrong with me. But becoming more connected with nature and being around the plants all the time helped me to start beginning to realise that how much trauma, even just growing up in our society, can inflict on you, and you don't even realise sometimes. And it's been a great learning journey over the last few years to me to go inward with the support of plants and plant medicines, to begin to bring that out and realise that feeling from the heart and the gut is something that's becoming more and more present for me on a daily basis.
And that's definitely what I've connected to on this journey as well, is realising that this feels right in my gut and in my heart. What we're doing now feels like exactly what we are supposed to be doing. So we have a YouTube channel called Freedom Forest Life, and we begun the YouTube channel around the time when COVID hit in 2020, and it was partially inspired by what was happening and changing in the world. But we, prior to that, had a desire to just share the joys of nature with as many people as possible. And certainly for me, one of my main reasons for doing YouTube videos is to help encourage more people to just grow beautiful fresh food and enjoy good quality food for themselves, because it really is just such a gift. And when you've experienced the freshness and the taste of homegrown food, there honestly is nothing quite like that. And I just feel that everybody should have that experience in their life.
So sometimes in life it can feel like everything's beating you down and life is so hard, and I've had many times where I've just felt at the bottom and like, what's the point? And I would just love for someone else maybe to hear who's feeling like that, that anything is possible. If you can dream it and have the vision and stick to that and don't give up, then pretty much anything is possible, I've found in my life. A lot of the time it's not easy. That doesn't mean to say it's going to be easy. It might take 5-10 years. I'd worked in a job for quite a few years. I really wasn't enjoying to save the money to make it possible to find this place.
It may be that you need to think up different methods and think outside of the box for how you can do things, but there is always a way to create a different life for yourself, we feel. And we do feel truly blessed to be able to live this life and have the experience with the food and nature and connection that we have here. And we also feel that anybody can do it as well.
Hello, and a very warm welcome back to the garden. Today, I'm going to show you my kind of different approach to harvesting. This is very much an abundant polyculture. And rather than going and harvesting for my food, I go and forage through the garden. And I want to show you some of the really interesting things that are happening, maybe give you some ideas and some interesting plant combinations that have happened by accident, because I've taken a very experimental approach, which is very different to how this garden was last year. So the first thing that spotted is that there are a couple of raspberries, but what I want to talk about first is this is a globe artichoke, mainly in its first year, and I've got the first globe here ready to harvest. It is such a delicacy, and so that's going to be the first thing I'm going to enjoy. So that is going to be absolutely delicious. Now around me here, there is so much food. I'm coming to the raspberries in a second, but at the bottom of my feet, I have some mint. So that is absolutely delicious. And then kind of hiding, I've got tons of rhubarb. Like everywhere around me is food. I've got peas. And then of course, the first of the autumn raspberries are starting to come out, and these are going to be absolutely delicious. So this garden is trying to embrace as much diversity as possible, and there are occasions where I will grow a bulk of something like potatoes or leeks, and that's fine. But wherever possible, I try and integrate as many different things as possible. And here, so there's a lot going on. I've got some beautiful dahlias, which I'm actually going to cut a couple to dry, just because they are looking so lovely. So look at those beauties, put those in there. And then beneath me here, I've got 4-took giant chard, which in my last video I gave a nice little shout out. And it really is an absolute giant. And really tasty, so I can grab like a couple of those leaves. And what I do whenever I come to the garden and I'm thinking, what shall I have for dinner? I actually love this wild jungle look. Yes, okay, right, it isn't as efficient as, say, creating things in blocks and making sure I don't have things spilling over into the pathways. But it's so much more fun. And it's that kind of joy that makes me like, every time I come to the garden, I'm like, oh, what's happening? And I've got squash and things growing under here. And like, you'd have no idea that right behind me is a tomato. Things are hiding everywhere. I can also just reach down wait for this, got a beetroot. So whilst it looks really wild, this is true food abundance. And for me, with permaculture, it's kind of taking certain different principles and realizing that there's no rule book. I don't care about companion planting. I think a lot of it is a little bit faddy, to be honest. So people are like, oh no, you can't grow that plant with this. I just disregard all of that. I focus on soil health. I focus on when I'm putting in plants, how they kind of work in terms of spacing. I'm like, well, is there just about enough space? Like putting those asparagus peas back there, yeah, they can just grow out. And it creates this amazing kind of patchwork quilt of flavour and colour. What always strikes me is, and it happens every year, but I can sometimes come to the garden and think, oh, there's not really much food. But as soon as you actually get in and you start looking at things, you realise there's a lot. Now, these plants are not perfect. This here is Australian tree cabbage, one of my absolute staples. It's got a few little holes in it, but at least I know it's organic and it's helping insects. In fact, there's been a lot of insect life, especially in the last month. It's like I felt a real boom. And there's a lot of things happening under here. I've got a courgette plant. One courgette plant is more than enough for one person. And then I've got rat's tail radish coming through. Now this area here is particularly exciting. There is a lot going on. I've got Greek gigantes beans, I've got runner beans, and the runner beans are coming on nicely. And this is one of the coolest things ever. You can eat runner bean flowers. They just have the most like lovely, refreshing beany taste. So I recommend that. And then up here, I've also got a squash that is starting to grow. And it's the same squash in that bed, and it's growing in between the potatoes. I don't mind. And then, of course, Brackets High Black Mints. And there's a little calendula underneath, so that'll be actually quite nice for a salad. So, behind me here, I've got this amazing nasturtium, sending off lots of nice flowers. I'll be thinking about nasturtium is that essentially the whole plant is edible. So the leaves are edible. The flowers are edible, and then the seed heads nice and edible. I'm just going to grab a couple of those that I can slice up nicely as a topping. In the front here, I'm actually going to do my first like mini harvest of Cavolo Nero kale. This was where I was growing some potatoes. Actually, I took out the potatoes, and then I've done a bit of a mixed medley planting. And so I'm going to take just couple of leaves there and one leaf from here. I don't want to take too much because all of these leaves are photosynthesizing and helping. But one of the kind of the core things about having a garden like this, and it really links into health. It's like you want to be healthy, you want to have as much diversity and variety of plants to eat. And rather than worrying about, say, doing your 5 a day and trying to get the right quantities of that, what I can do is a right medley of 20 to 30 different plants in a single mealtime if I wanted to. I'll give you a very quick example of how that can quickly kind of build up. So here I've got peas growing. So pea shoots is one example. I've got seashore growing. Seashore is another example. This here is a dwarf runner bean, which will be interesting to see what happens. This here is dill. So I can add the dill in, and then there's a couple of like little beetroot leaves, and already like that I'm quickly getting that beautiful diversity. It's like the idea of eating the rainbow. I've got a little lettuce here, so I could grab a couple of like little lettuce leaves, and it is simple as that. Now here is a really interesting kind of semi-wild planting scheme. I put in a nasturtium and a Vietnamese coriander, and I've got this bronze fennel which is growing really, really nicely. And this is all like a mix. And what I've noticed is that the Vietnamese coriander is almost using the bronze fennel as a little bit of a structure to go upwards. And we've got the cascading effect of the nasturtium, and the nasturtium is actually growing out the other side of the door, which I quite like. And this is one of my absolute favourite beds here. I just wanted a bed of colour and insect life. And so we've got the Monarda or bergamot, 2 different types growing. This Korean agastache, it just smells absolutely amazing. And then I've got yarrow, this stunning kind of red yarrow, different cosmoses, and calendula. And I've got a little zinnia here, a little orange zinnia, pink zinnia. There is so much happening within this bed. And there's a lot of things tucked in and happening behind. I've got a little bit of amaranth growing, so I might want to add a few of these amaranth leaves in. But it's keeping me kind of, in terms of a permaculture garden, I think it's so important to have not just edible polyculture, but also visual polyculture. And so incorporating flowers within the garden and ones that have edible purposes, like if you wanted to, you can eat the petals of zinnia. They're a little bit bitter, so use it sparingly. But again, it's just giving you options. And then at the back here, which is very exciting, I've got a thornless blackberry, which is nice. And that's a good one. Sometimes they're a little sour, but that's looking good. We want to see what's happening in here. I'm going to start to make my way. I've got the hotbed here, lots of spaghetti squash, jumbo pink banana squash. This is actually quite interesting. This is where I've got some sweet peas growing. And this is a perennialized runner bean in a sense. So I managed to overwinter the tubers and I've been harvesting the runner bean, but it's also growing in between the sweet peas, which I quite like that. I quite like to see that. Behind is a Japanese wineberry, and I'm just making my way through. I've got Aztec broccoli, and yes, it's a little bit of a pain making my way through, but it is a lot of fun. Now, in the back here, this tree spinach, I actually cooked it the other day when making some lunch, and it's just a really nice flavour. I think this is going to be, for me moving forward, one of my bulk greens in a way, even though it's got this beautiful magenta tip. It's going to be one of my bulk kind of crops for greens that I'm going to eat. And then in the back here, I've just let it go into kind of just crazy polyculture city. I've also got some Verbena boreensis growing here just for the butterflies and various different perennials. I'm not going to focus too much on the perennials today, but in the front here, I have a massive angelica. This is Yacon that is growing through. And then I'm also growing this purple tree spinach, which actually would be quite nice to add to the mix. So growing all of these, and I've got this abundance, and there's so many different squash hiding underneath my feet. And this is getting bigger. And then in there, I've got ochre and Chinese artichoke. And yeah, it is absolutely, it looks like chaos, but it's design chaos. Sometimes I will see something maybe growing too far or too much over something. So like this angelica leaf at the bottom is kind of inhibiting the Yacon. So I'm just going to cut that and basically chop and drop just to give a little bit of extra space for this Yacon to really thrive. So here in the polytunnel, finally, this had a lot of slug issues. One of the things that I put down was strulch, which does make a really nice effect, but everything's grown. I've just been filling in some extra things. This is either amaranth, I think this is amaranth, but I've been planting some callaloo as well. This is one cucumber plant that I've trained into a set of 3. I've got some beautiful cucumbers and I've been having a lot of beautiful ones. Behind here hiding is an aubergine and then a cornichon, or however you say it, cucumber. The tomatoes are going great guns. It's taken them quite a while with all of my tomatoes, both the ones that I've done as normal cordons and these wild ones. Like this here is one plant, and trained it into 2 black strawberry, looking really good. And what I've started to do is clear the base and underplant tomatoes. Now I've been chatting about underplanting tomatoes in my latest journal, but the idea is if I've got all of this space at the bottom, I don't want to be redundant. I always want to think about how can I maximize it. So I put in some kind of low growing plants just to make sure that the airflow remains nice. But really happy with this. And the little winner for me, whilst to see the melon starting to grow, is something called Greek basil. Now the squash is growing so well that it's decided to run a few meters and escape from the kitchen garden, which is quite funny. And this is the other side of the thornless blackberry. If you want to see something pretty cool, this is a cordon tomato and this one as well. And we put a runner bean in, and the runner bean has grown up through, well, actually up the string, missing most of the tomato plant, and over the top. So here I can have both the runner beans as a harvest and also the tomatoes. So here I've got over 20 different edible things that I can enjoy. And that very much is that kind of forage mentality of going around the garden, seeing what's ready, seeing what's in its prime. I'll now take this home and use this to kind of design a meal. I'll probably group different things together, like, you know, the salad ingredients and then the root veg and things and the leafy greens. But it is so simple, it is so abundant, and this is the kind of food that you can get out every single day.
Hi, I'm Saron and I live on a small holding of 6 acres in West Wales with my husband Bob. I've been growing food for over 30 years. I started in our family back garden when I was a child. My mum encouraged me to grow tomatoes, probably because I didn't eat my vegetables. I hated vegetables, but once I grew my own tomato plant and ate the first tomato, I was like, converted totally, and I had this incredible desire to kind of grow more things. I think I like to be in control of what I eat in terms of the quality and what goes into it, and I just really love the creative process, and I feel really satisfied when I can grow something from seed, take it to the next step and the next step, and ultimately cook it and eat it. It's just, to me, the most satisfying feeling in the world. Self-sufficiency is about being empowered, really, and not having to look to others to feed you and to provide things that you need. It's that ability to just do things when you want to do it, have the resources to do it, and have the skills to be able to do it, and to get a really good product that you know the provenance of. It's just hugely important to me. Keep a garden journal, because then you can look back and see what worked the previous year, what didn't work, the varieties that you grew, what your family thought of the things that you've grown. Every year is a little bit different. Try not to be discouraged if you've got a bad year weather-wise, because every year is going to be a little bit challenging in some shape or form. But start small to begin with, and keep your mind open, talk to people, write it down. My gardening style is fairly informal. It's a kind of a chaotic by engineering. I like to plant a variety of things, flowers now and vegetables and herbs all kind of together. There is a little bit of a purpose though. There are paths, there are things that kind of are encouraged to self-seed. So I let a few herbs go to seed and then drop their seeds, and if they come up again, great, that's one less thing I've got to plant. I try to encourage birds and nature into the garden because I think overall that's better for the health of the garden. This year I've grown a lot more flowers to encourage the pollinators, and it's attracted so many bees, bumblebees, honeybees. So we're into September now. Quite a lot of things are reaching their maturity now, and I'm going to be harvesting quite a lot of things. But there's also things growing that will be harvested later on in the season, like the leeks and some of the brassicas. Soil, that's the infrastructure of the garden. You've just got to feed it and make it rich and healthy, and I think everything follows on from there. The better you treat your soil, ultimately, the better your crops are going to be. The animals play a huge role in the garden. They eat quite a lot of the garden waste. So any cabbage leaves or rotten tomatoes go to the chickens. The goats will eat some of the Jerusalem artichoke stalks. Their manure is going into the compost pile and helping to enrich the soil. They play a huge part in the fertility and the success of the garden. Every year I play it a little bit by ear, depending on how the weather's going at the time. Like a lot of gardeners, I get really enthusiastic about January and I start planning things and ordering seeds that I don't have. But I've learned to become a little bit more patient. In the past, I've planted things super early and thought, I'll get a head start, and then planted them out and they've not grown well because the ground is too cold or you get a late frost. So now I'm kind of learning to just be that little bit more patient, because plants always catch up, even if you plant them a few weeks later than everybody else. Every year I try to plant something new. I like trying things that I haven't grown before, new varieties, sometimes new techniques, letting things reseed amongst the established vegetable plants is kind of an experiment. Oh yeah, not putting netting over some of the brassicas and putting it on other brassicas just to compare the difference. Well, you know how that's going to turn out. Having said that, because there's so much stuff growing in here, the damage done to the uncovered brassicas I think was minimal, because there was a little bit more of a balance and things are beginning to grow through now. So you've got to be prepared to take a little bit of a risk and a little bit of a chance. I also grow seeds from the Lampicus Seed Library, which I help to run, because I think saving locally adapted seeds is hugely important, really good. I've got stuff growing here that I've saved seeds from for 8-9 years, and they're really happy, and you know that they're just growing because they've adapted to the sort of conditions that I like to garden with. My YouTube channel is just a way of documenting what I'm doing on our small holding. So gardening, cooking tips, very simple cooking tutorials, preserving your food, just giving a little flavour of what it's like to live in West Wales on a small holding, and that anybody can do it regardless of your age. Next year, I think I'll continue to plant more flowers. In fact, I think I'm going to plant more flowers amongst the vegetables. It looks nice, it attracts wildlife. I have cut flowers. It's a win-win situation. I'll try different varieties of vegetables. I'm building a hedge of kind of native trees and things to help make it more of a microclimate and to produce fodder for the goats that we keep as well. Having polytunnels is an absolute bonus. I think because of the cooler, wetter temperatures out here in West Wales, having these polytunnels just means you've got shelter and warmth at the time that you need it, and you gain an extra couple of weeks either end of the season. So you can start a little bit earlier and you can end a little bit later. In fact, I have things going and growing in there pretty much all year round. Brassicas, they grow better. I grow things obviously outdoors, but the stuff under cover grows especially well. It never gets boring, picking that first ripe tomato, digging up those first potatoes, harvesting those leeks. It's just, I'm always amazed that it happens, and I'm always grateful that it happens, and I'm always kind of astounded that it happens from that tiny seed. So much potential. Given the right conditions, everything wants to grow and produce, and I'm just really thankful.
Now, would you like a little more inspiration? Well, you'll enjoy this video, and I've also got a whole playlist of gardens that you can enjoy right there.